So I'm Todd Harding. I am the Deputy Chief of Staff for the NOAA Satellite and Information Service. And you might be wondering why NOAA is here. We're usually known for our National Weather Service, but my office builds and operates the 15 satellite constellation that provide you your weather forecast every day.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ben Higdon with the Kentucky Association of Manufacturers. We represent the manufacturing industry, and that includes a lot of aerospace manufacturers here in Kentucky.
I'm Ken Kinn. I'm Director of Quality at Messier Bugatti USA. It's a aircraft manufacturer of wheels and brakes. Earlier in the presentation, somebody mentioned there's a brake company up north having a hard time keeping up with the growth in the industry. That's us. We're part of a bigger company called Safran Group, a French-based company that does a lot more in the space area, so I know a lot about the space industry, but our company specifically is more in aircraft.
I'm Ed Webb, the World Trade Center in Kentucky. I'm President and CEO. We're the World Trade Center out in New York City. We have 2 offices here in Kentucky, one in Lexington and one in Louisville. 300 offices globally, over 100 different countries.
As you can tell, we've got a wide variety of expertise and knowledge up here on the stage. And to go ahead and get it started, let's go ahead and, Ed, you want to kick us off? And we talked a little bit about exports today, but I really think people need to grasp how aerospace really impacts so many people in Kentucky.
Brad, thank you. Very quickly, we work with companies in the state of Kentucky in the region to discuss exporting their product out of Kentucky into anywhere from Canada, our #1 trading partner, to Mexico, to the Americas. And kind of a fun thought that I had when Brad asked me to speak today to talk to this group here was that when you talk to companies outside of Kentucky and countries themselves about what we're known for, what do you hear regularly? Show of hands or just a shout out?
Horses.
Got it. And what else? Did you say bourbon and Camrys? I like that combination. That works. But with inevitably, when Brad and I traveled to Canada a couple of times, we hear again bourbon, we hear horses, but when we talk to companies and again countries about the fact that our #1 export in Kentucky, and everyone knows what it is, show of hands, it's aerospace. And people come back and say, well, how can that be? Well, we give them the numbers and explain the companies here, i.e. this man next to me here also, but the fact that we can tell people outside of Kentucky and outside the U.S. that Kentucky is known for its aerospace industry is huge, huge for educational matters in terms of what kind of quality people do we have, what level students are they, do they know their math, can they be astronauts, can they be engineers, and the answer is yes. So from that standpoint, Brad, we love preaching that gospel that aerospace is key for the state.
And, you know, a lot of people don't realize that Kentucky is actually third nationally for aerospace exports. We're behind Washington State, who has a little company known as Boeing. And we also have California that's ahead of us, and they make a few aerospace things there. But for Kentucky to be number 3, we always say that Kentucky is punching above our weight. And I think that's very true of when you think about workforce and the efforts that we're doing across the state to build up our workforce. And Ben, you want to touch on a little bit of how we're preparing workforce to help build up this industry?
Sure. And actually, Ken probably doesn't even know this, but I was just at his company a couple weeks ago and had a great tour. And I tell everybody how cool Messier Bugatti Audi is. And they're actually just announced, I mean, this is official, it's in the press, I guess, an $100 million expansion.
It just went up to 150 now.
150 million, 59 you said?
150.
$150 million expansion and going to be hiring 80 new employees. So that's one of the greatest successes in the aeronautics industry here in Kentucky. They're making the airplane brakes up there, supplying all over the place. And so they're going to be hiring 80 new jobs. They're one of the members of the Kentucky Fame initiative here in Kentucky. So, and Danette, who spoke this morning. Oh, we got another member of Fame back there. Danette, who spoke this morning. Lots of employers in this room. One of the challenges or one of the initiatives that with the Kentucky Association of Manufacturers that are one of our biggest pillars is workforce. And, statistically in Kentucky right now, we're at full employment. Danette actually is the co-chair of the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board as well. I don't know how she has time to do all the stuff she does. But we are, constantly looking at ways to build and improve a skilled and qualified workforce. Any employer or any business you talk to right now, that's the #1 challenge probably raise your hand if you're an employer in the room, and that's a challenge that you're looking for, is finding that skilled and qualified workforce. I know all of you all, right?
Absolutely.
So one of those models is the Federation for Advanced Manufacturing Education, which is a earn and learn basically program. It's an apprenticeship style model where the students go to school 2 days a week and then go and work at those industries 3 days a week. I believe you all have 2 students right now that are working.
We actually have 5,
Oh.
2 from this year and 3 the year before.
Yeah, and so there's over 125 employers throughout the state right now. That is an advanced manufacturing technician training program. Over 125 employers are participating right now. We have chapters all across the state, and that's kind of building that talent pipeline in order to create those skills for those students. They can go on into engineering programs after that, and then go on and go into those skilled trades, go and work for those employers in those aeronautics industries. And all over throughout those, as our speaker before was talking about, if you're building the widgets or if you're working on the, in the space, aircraft, building those planes, whatever it may be, it's all a part of that, aerospace industry. And so that's kind of one of those ways. I was looking at all these kids out here earlier today about all those, if you look around, this panel is called The Future of the Aerospace Industry, or the future of the aerospace industry. Those students that are out here, are all going to end up in engineering programs. We've got Project Lead the Way out there as one of those, initiatives that we're looking at. We are going to, CAM is participating in the World VEX Robotics Championships in Louisville, if you are familiar with that, coming up in a couple weeks. There's going to be 22,000 students from around the world competing in engineering challenges and robotics here in Louisville. And that's, all over the place. So we've got a lot of different initiatives coming up here to try to help create that, workforce.
Yeah, and when we talk about the workforce across Kentucky, there's 52 aerospace-related facilities, according to the Cabinet for Economic Development, that are employing 15,000 people. Now, if we ask the population of Kentucky how many people work in the aerospace industry, most of them would say probably 10. But we've got 15,000 people that are around the state working on that. And to give you an idea of how we're seeing this grow, there's been a 63% increase in employees in private aerospace products and parts manufacturing since 2002. A 63% increase. And again, I'd say a good portion of them are going up to your facility. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Messier Bugatti and what you do, and even the larger family that is Safran?
Sure, it's been kind of neat listening today, kind of being here, listening to why everybody thinks Kentucky is such a great place for, aerospace, aircraft business to come this way. Well, it's interesting for me because I've lived it, seeing my company kind of choosing Kentucky. And it's not really a U.S. Personnel choosing that either, it's from France. And our parent company is called Safran. Our headquarters is in Paris, France. And Messier Bugatti at one point supplied carbon brakes throughout the world strictly from Paris, surrounding area of Paris. And as we grew, they had to find a way to go closer to their customer. Namely, we were getting more and more Boeing business. And so they knew they wanted to be in the Americas somewhere. And so, here you have a contingent of executives in Paris saying, where should we go in the Americas? It could be Canada, it could be Mexico, it could be the US. And out of all of that, when they boiled everything down without getting into all the details and data and everything, they chose Kentucky. Most people in Paris might not even know where Kentucky is. And here they chose to come to Kentucky for a lot of the reasons that I've heard throughout the day. The logistics, obviously, we have to ship our product out to our customers. We've got product coming in, product going out, a lot of logistics happening. So that was one big driving factor. Utility costs being another one is, we use a significant amount of utilities, meaning electricity and natural gas in our product. And then the workforce itself. And, we've had no problems up until this point in time growing our workforce, but now we're growing rapidly enough. It's been a challenge, and we're doing things like the Kentucky Fame. So our business, again, we're called Messier Bugatti USA. We make carbon brakes and then wheel assembly and brake assemblies in our plant. We've been there since 1999, so about 16, 17 years. And I don't believe they've ever not had an expansion growing on based on the increase in the industry. From the time they built and got qualified in their brakes, immediately they had an expansion to double the plant, and it's been going on ever since. The exciting part is, in addition to quality, I've had responsibilities within the purchasing area as well. And one of our last expansions, which was overlapping our last expansion and going to overlap our next expansion, is building and growing a plant in Malaysia. Again, to meet the needs of our Asian customers. So it's a little bit about being close to the customer too. But here it is, Walton, Kentucky, and we were actually responsible within my purchasing group to buy all the hardware and equipment, capital equipment for Malaysia and have it shipped over there. So again, similar numbers, about a $100 to $150 million expansion, brand new plant, lots of capital involvement, lots of equipment, and we did the same thing in Malaysia, and now we're going to do it again in Walton.
Yeah, as we talk about future and we workforce, and we had a lot of students here today, take note. These are the opportunities that are in front of you. We want to make sure that you understand the opportunities there, and then make sure that your educational plan is in line with what markets truly exist here in Kentucky. And we got our friends here from Kentucky Aviation Association. You can tell them, Robert, that there's a lot of aviators around the state and aviation technology that need workforce, and we want to make sure that we're telling this story. So I know the last speaker said make sure you're out telling the story, but we need you also telling the story to the kids in your communities, to reach out to employers such as Messier, Bugatti, and others that can really provide a career in a technology arena.
Here's some trivia for you here. Basically, for the group here, every time your jet stops on the tarmac, think this guy. So, those brakes work. A little trivia. Of the 98 schools that exist that do training in aviation, roughly 25 are here in Kentucky, which is a great sign for the state, which is a good opportunity for the students here to think about a career opportunity.
And Dr. Tim Smith's back there. He's a proud man right now. He's up to 50.
Wow.
Todd, we've talked now about manufacturing. We've talked about workforce. But why don't you tell us about the stuff that's happening in the satellites around the world? Now Kentucky's really become the powerhouse associated with these satellites.
Yeah, so it's the U.S. government, in fact, and particularly NOAA, is undergoing a bit of a paradigm shift. In the past, weather satellite and weather data was an inherently governmental function. Startups around the U.S. and globally are now proving that they can take the measurements we need from space, and they might be able to provide that data to us in a trusted and timely and continuous way that we need it to go into your weather forecasting. So we are undertaking an initiative called the Commercial Data Weather Pilot Program. It's an opportunity for industry to engage with NOAA and to figure out a way that we can test your data if you were to put a satellite in space. And we also have another part of my organization called the Office of Space Commerce. And that organization is charged for the United States in advocating for space commerce, both domestically and internationally. And if you go to space.commerce.gov, you can find a lot of information about what we're doing in addition to this weather pilot project. And so, we're in the midst of learning how to deal with all of these new space entities that can now, in some instances, cheaper and faster, provide data that the government has been used to providing for over 50 years.
Thanks, Todd. As we talk about opportunities in the state, know that as an economic developer, one of my tasks is to go around nationally and internationally to try to locate or try to find facilities that can locate in Kentucky. And Ed, right now we got aerospace products coming from or leaving Kentucky, going to 86 different countries. I know you've been a part of the trade missions in the past from the state perspective and also from the World Trade Center. Can you talk about those trade missions and how we are trying to tell the story of Kentucky and help recruit additional aerospace companies here?
Thank you, Brad. What's happening again? Brad mentioned the trade missions. We just got back from one in Mexico to Guadalajara and also to Mexico City. In fact, there's a bigger show coming up, I believe, Brad, to Germany sometime this year, to Hanover. But Canada is our top trading partner for Kentucky, has been for a number of years, followed by the UK, Mexico, with China coming online too, as far as the top five. When we talk to these different countries about what's happening in Kentucky, we get back to my earlier statement regarding what are we known for. And people inevitably come back and say, well, you're known for your bourbon, you're known for your racehorses. And we figure out before the mission what is big there as far as industry sectors. And if the country has automotive, in this case, aerospace or aviation, we'll target those companies and hopefully try to attempt to meet with them to say, consider the state, consider Kentucky, consider our workforce. So for us, again, Brad, it's been a kind of a new stage for us to look at for the state, because again, when we get there initially, they don't understand or know again, back in the back, 50 schools now that are dealing with the aviation and the what's happening there as far as that whole world. And getting back to some of the play for Kentucky, the major companies here, and I've got to get the workforce developed in a big way. We've got some of the biggest players here as far as logistics. And when you talk to the UPSs and or the DHLs or the FedExes, they're involved in the aviation in a big way, and those craft. They're looking for people regularly. And moving that product back and forth, the aviation products, those parts and pieces, whatever the case might be, how can they get it here from Canada or from Mexico? We know those big three can provide those services for us. So again, bottom line being, it changes the face of trade for Kentucky and what we talk about when we visit these various countries about what we have here, provide that company, that country as far as workforce, as far as product development.
Ken, in looking back at your past, I know that you had a past life in your career where you were in the automotive manufacturing arena. Can you draw some of those similarities? Because almost everybody in the room recognizes Toyotas and Fords and Corvettes as being made in Kentucky, but the industries, are there similarities?
No, I think there are a lot of similarities from a manufacturing standpoint. As a matter of fact, we're hiring a lot of people now as we go forward into into the airline industry from automotive. A lot of the core manufacturing, lean, knowledge, Kaizen events, things like that, bringing it into manufacturing. Even a lot of things, FMEAs, PFMEAs, that kind of stuff. A lot of the quality designations. I think I mentioned to you earlier that we just, when our name became Messier Bugatti Dowdy, it was actually a merge between Messier Bugatti and Messier Dowdy, two separate companies, one that made wheels and brakes, one that made landing gear. And by merging them, we had more of a system approach to going into the airframers. The same kind of thing was happening in automotive a number of years back, where automotive companies like Toyota was looking for a full system to buy, not individual component parts. So the airline industry is kind of doing the same thing. They're consolidating, they're trying to put together a system so that the full component, not just components, but full systems are coming in together so that Boeing can put them together much quicker. They need to do that as they're growing.
If you're comfortable with telling us, can you tell us some of the companies that you all deal with as far as from an aviation standpoint?
Customers, or
Yes,
you mean?
customers.
So customers, it's kind of interesting. This is one of the differences in aerospace versus automotive. When you go out and you buy a Toyota, and you have a full car. You have the brakes already on it, right? When a company like, let's say we're real familiar with Delta. Delta goes in and tells Boeing, I want to buy a jet. I want to buy a 737 jet. Well, guess what? They get a choice as to who their brakes are made by. They could choose Messier Bugatti, or they can choose our competitor. And so that's one area where it's very different. So we actually, in terms of customers, have not only the airframers, which is mainly like the Airbus and Boeing, and then some of the regional jet companies as well, like Bombardier and Embraer, but we also have the airlines themselves as customers, like the Deltas. So they, when they go and buy the jet, get to pick who they want for their brakes, and they do that based on how well the product is, quality, the quality level of the product, and most importantly, how long do they last, and when they wear, just like your brakes on a car, the airline brakes wear after about 2,000 landings. They have to ship it back to us, and we have a contract where from the time they ship it to us, we have to refurbish it, completely finish it, get it back to them within 10 days. And we normally do that in about 8 days, but once they know you can do it in 8 days, they expect 7 days and then 6 days, and they want better and better, even though the contract is 10. But when you can build that relationship with that customer, that you're a quality supplier, they'll then, when they go buy that next 737 or 787, want to choose us as a supplier for that product. And that's one of the reasons for our success and our growth.
And I think leveraging the airport in Northern Kentucky has been very important for your all's business model.
Yeah, so back to the 10 days, we've got parts coming in, going out, and these refurbished heat packs are called for the brake assemblies. They have to get there, and they have to reliably get there. Because we could do all the work, but if it's on the road and it's being shipped by truck or something, it's just not going to happen as quick. So a lot of these are all flown, and having the airport there is instrumental to our decision to be where we are.
And I think that's a very important concept. People around the state, we have lots of airports, but people need to start thinking of those airports as those economic engines. And I know the Kentucky Aviation Association has that study that's coming out. And here in Moorhead, you have a great airport, and you have an economic development industrial site located right next to it. That is a great thing to leverage. I know Terry with the MMRC is trying to do that very thing and showcase that industrial sites with the airport. Now, Todd, switching directions here a little bit, what do you see the future of satellites, and how do you think Moorhead State and the efforts that are going here can leverage those opportunities?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot less of the big satellites. The satellite that we launch is usually the size of a school bus. You all are talking about satellites the size of a Kleenex box. So in the past, we had to do that to get sort of the data validity that we needed and the resolution. Today, with the advancement in cameras and all sorts of technology, those have gotten smaller. So I think you will see constellations of CubeSats and small sats that have capabilities that we're used to in these larger satellites. So I think that in terms of space observations, there's a huge paradigm shift going on. I think it's going to get more crowded in space. I think that in addition, there's some pretty innovative work going on with Blue Origin and SpaceX and others about returning their boosters to reuse them again, which will make getting to space cheaper, more economical, and as those costs are driven down, you will see more players with the capital to get involved. And so I think we're in a very interesting time to be sort of looking at CubeSats and smaller sats. And I think it's exciting that Moorhead has gotten into that game. As a native Kentuckian, it's exciting to see. And we look forward to seeing what continues to come out of Moorhead and these opportunities.
Ben, when we start talking about manufacturing and industrial segments of Kentucky, they're booming right now. From an economic development standpoint, we're seeing expansion after expansion, very similar to what Ken's seeing with Messier Bugatti. We saw a huge announcement also from GE Aviation just a few months ago saying that they're expanding now. As you look at the opportunities for the industrial community of Kentucky, what do you see the challenges? How can we help our employers, and what do we need to be doing as a state to make sure that we're providing everything they need? We talk about the logistics, but what are those other things that are kind of the magic, the secret sauce, so to speak, to help these companies grow and locate in Kentucky?
That's a great question. So obviously, we see the same challenges over and over again. Right now with the workforce, we have over 2,400 companies right now, manufacturing companies in Kentucky, over 300 automobile related, 237,000 people employed by the manufacturing industry. And those are constantly growing, as we talked about earlier this morning with the announcement in Nelson County, going to hire 240 people up there in Northern Kentucky. With you all going to expand with 80 more people, constantly, new people being hired, and it's skilled people. So we're starting earlier and earlier with those STEM programs, trying to build those talent pipelines with those initiatives like Kentucky Fame, and trying to get people earlier. We have initiatives like the TRAP program, which is the Tech Ready Apprentices for Careers in Kentucky, which is starting high school students into manufacturing apprenticeships in those companies, trying to get people really involved from an early age to develop the workforce. So challenges, I think, obviously keeping energy costs low. So we have a big energy conference coming up, shameless plug, May 10th and 11th. If anybody's interested, I'm giving away a free registration if you put your name in my hard hat out there. And our hard hats are functional. I wear those when I go to companies. So energy costs, keeping those low. We try to, advocate for legislation that's going to, benefit, those sorts of changes to, energy costs. Those workforce initiatives. Healthcare seems to be a big challenge. Changes to the Affordable Care Act and that kind of stuff. But creating an environment here in Kentucky to, foster that kind of stuff. Obviously working closely with the Cabinet for Economic Development and our local economic developers to, provide those incentives to get them here and keep them here. Does that kind of answer that question?
I think that was perfect. As we start looking at the future, Ed, you've talked about the trade missions and the opportunities. We have a group that's leaving towards the end of April for Hanover Messe, one of the largest trade shows in the world. The president's going to be there. They're going to even be showcasing things from Space Tango and parts from Kentucky to the president and Chancellor Merkel. As we look at the world reach of aviation products from Kentucky, where do you see the World Trade Center getting involved? What are your targets going forward?
What's key for Kentucky, and it ties in all of us here. In fact, I'm looking at this group of folks I'm speaking with, and I'm proud to be here, but we're all interconnected in terms of the brake manufacturer of CAM, the great work they do, with the work that John does in the end there with weather and the like, and satellites. Key for the state, Brad, is the education, workforce development, and that's the first component of the first ladder of the World Trade Center. We try to educate and work to educate businesses on trade opportunities in the state, and we're certainly going to support these organizations because, candidly, with some of the figures we're getting right now in the aviation side of back order from GE on their parts and their engines, and going up to 10 years of back order for parts and engines themselves. We've got to have a workforce to create those pieces and ship those pieces out to various parts of the country. So for us, what we're doing for the next 3 years in our planning is looking at the workforce development and innovation opportunities for the businesses here and the employees here and the students here. And just for the trivia, how many folks are students in this audience? I guess really in the end, we're all students. We're continually learning. I think this group is also, but I did a quick scan this morning, actually last night on the internet, looking for jobs in Kentucky in aviation and basically aerospace. And Brad, I have roughly 150 hits of jobs that are openings right now that exist, which means those are high-paying jobs. And again, Ben, you can address that better than I can as far as the pay and the opportunity. So for us, one word, or maybe a couple of words, workforce development.
And in closing, I just want to stress that is becoming the mantra in economic development. Ken Robinson from the western side of the state can attest. We've traveled a lot of the country together. Workforce is becoming the driving force for getting projects, and that's one of the reasons. And Ben, I'm going to take a shameless plug here too. We're trying to develop the largest STEM-based workforce in the country, and we're trying to do it in eastern Kentucky, and we're doing it with Congressman Hal Rogers, and we're doing it with Governor Bevin, and we're trying to pull in the right resources to start looking at this as an opportunity for the East. Representative Rocky Atkins said earlier, this is our time, this is our opportunity, and we've got to get everybody pulling in the same direction and understanding that we've got a real future here, and the more we tell this story, not only domestically but internationally, the better off our entire state will be.